Point of personal privilege, if I may. We got a couple of things to cover, but huh. um, I kind of, like it's like when China comes up, there are certain areas where I have, I guess, an inside take. I know a little bit more than the averages. Meth teeth? That's what you think Matt Gaetz had? That's a tough one. Yeah, it's so odd. Ugh. So, well, let's just get right to it. Ladies and gentlemen, Marianne Williamson back on Fox. And I guess, I mean, she would be on, Russell Brand's show and all those other things, but, RFK Jr. is eating up all that space. So she just lost her South Carolina campaign staff, all three people. And yeah. And so she's back on Fox. I don't know which show this is. Is she on Hannity? Let's look, because I don't pre-watch it. Otherwise, we're going to skip dinner with NATO leaders and explains her decision to enter the same Fox News, whatever. Just says Fox News. We'll see who she's with. They only give her 4 minutes. Let's see.
President Biden raising eyebrows.
She's on Fox and Freens. Okay.
Dinner with NATO leaders last night, citing a heavy workload.
I bet he had a big breakfast then. And that's not the only event he's skipping. The DNC still not scheduling any debates against his.
All right, I got to turn off the. And also, I don't know why it gets turned down sometimes. That's by the way, that was Ducey's dig. In case you didn't hear that, is that Biden skipped the meal that they were going to have, that world leaders were going to have, because he had a big breakfast or something. Because that would be the excuse he would use, because he's old and skinny or something.
Democratic challengers, including our next guest.
He really doesn't have much of a campaign yet. Democratic presidential candidate.
He doesn't. Just an extraordinary economy compared to the rest of the earth, and an actual infrastructure bill.
Marianne Williamson joins us now. Marianne, great to see you on the couch.
Good
morning.
Thank you for
Good morning.
Your reaction to the president saying, "I'm going to bail" on dinner last night when you meet with allies.
Well, this is a pretty important meeting. This is
Yeah, this is one of those meetings where if you don't show, they're gonna change the plan somewhere between the soup and the nuts.
NATO. He's meeting with Zelensky. So
Yeah, he already did. He met with Zelensky for over an hour. He didn't need the point was he did skip the state dinner because they're actually coordinating shit.
if the president says, I have work to do and I want to work with my team on my speech, I don't fault him for that.
You know, one of the things that's going on right now, there's some bipartisan criticism that the administration is going to give Ukraine cluster bombs, which are outlawed in 120 different nations, except the United States, Russia, and Ukraine. What do you think about that?
I think cluster bombs should not be used. There's a reason for the Geneva
They are being used. They are being used. They're being used by Russia. They're also using white phosphorus. But please continue.
Convention for these international laws. These are bombs which could hurt innocent children, civilians for years to come.
Because they don't all detonate at once.
Pardon?
They don't all detonate
Absolutely.
at once.
And they can have terrible, terrible repercussions even after a war is over. But they should not be used.
Tell us a little bit about you, your policy, why you want to run for president, and put yourself and your family through that. We see what happens to Donald Trump, and you're running against the current.
Yeah, it's the same thing. You're giving up a great life, just like Donald Trump. You're sacrificing your comfy existence.
President.
There are many aspects of it that are unpleasant. There's no doubt about it. But there are other aspects about it that are exhilarating. And the exhilarating part is talking to the people of the United States.
Yes, because you can't do that unless you run for president. I mean, saps like me, we do it after, stand-up and Nerd Halen shows. But, yeah, I mean, maybe it's different. Maybe when I run for president, yeah. Well, we'll see. When I run for president, maybe people will talk to me differently in an exhilarating fashion because I guess book tours are snooze fests.
I don't think the people are the problem in this country. I think.
Well, that's very charitable. Isn't that nice? Congratulations, guys.
We need to remember that. I think there's a political system that often does more to thwart and to suppress the voice of the people than to facilitate the voice of the people. And that
it was a rigged and stolen election. We need voter ID. They're mailing these ballots out.
That's the problem we have. I believe that we have too many legislators who, when push comes to shove, do the bidding of their own corporate donors and billionaire donors than to actually serve the health and safety and well-being of their own constituents.
Like I mean, you're going to find some obvious examples if you think Sinema and Manchin, probably on our side, are the most direct. That there's this idea that they're less favorable to green energy policy on Manchin's side because he comes from a coal state, which hasn't been the case so far. But or Sinema somehow is especially beholden to her donors because she was against student debt relief or something like that, or was on the fence about it, unlike Bernie Sanders, wherein, by the way, the program itself would have benefited people in Vermont much more than it would have benefited people in Arizona. And she's a state senator. She's a senator from that state, so it, 1-to-1, her constituents weren't into it the way, say, Vermont ones were, or what have you. But what exactly? I'm honestly serious about this. There was definitely a period pre-social media where to buy TV ads, which was the primary way that you could put stuff out, and then I guess eventually on Facebook and at the early start of Facebook really taking off in places like Twitter, that like putting together a team that put ads together that could grab people, those people were expensive. Now, not so much. So if you're going for big donors, what are those donations paying for in your campaign that get you elected? Because it's not like, I mean, when we're talking about Clarence Thomas or somebody like that, these dudes are just fucking paying their bills. This isn't even a campaign thing. But when I mean this sincerely, if you're going to bring up somebody bought and sold, this idea that these people, put money towards this campaign, and the politician is making the votes they're making or making the case they're making in the over the course of being in office because they're getting cash that goes against the constituency they're in front of. Now, if you're making that case, fucking have at it. I want to hear it. Name names or shut the fuck up. But the other thing too is that I think most of the time where you find that there's a candidate or an actual politician who gets into office who's more aligned with a particular donor class or a particular set of people, it's because the area they come from as a congressperson or even as a senator is almost a uniquely aligned political situation with the economics of the area. Think Wall Street in New York, or think South Carolina and petrochemicals and biochemicals and just chemistry in general. And like, I guess the technological sector of Arizona, the growing chip factories there, but also, ASU and all the tech colleges, they're out of there. And kind of the root point of those three cities really Arizona being essentially three cities, runs off of this kind of growing secondary Silicon Valley. So there's an alignment where you can go, okay, they're always going to vote for this, but is it because they're bought off or because they come from a place where that's what everybody there cares about and that's all they care about? Or they're so in line with it in the case of like New York, they want it to succeed even if they're not a part of it because they count on it. There we go. No limit political contributions, no super PACs. Yeah, I'm not against that in general, but I also think that there's two things you have to believe that money in politics drives everything. And the primary one is that people are easily hypnotized and fucking stupid. That's the primary one. You have to believe that it's the number of ads you see, that it's, that there's some sort of Hitlerian lie that you can convince people of if you just show them enough ads, and enough dumbasses will go out there and stamp something, whether they're for it or not, because they've seen so many ads. And again, when you're talking about, when we used to have 3 networks or even 5, or the first cable networks started growing, you could make an argument that those extra donor dollars allowed you, especially on a national level, to grow your imprint on the national media. Now that's almost completely unnecessary. So again, I don't mind if you're calling out corrupt politicians who are on the take, who are voting against the will of the voters for their donors. But it should be fairly easy to call out. you should be able to just go, look at this vote, look at this part, because I'm not seeing it. Not the way I used to see it in the 90s anyways.
Even when poll after poll after poll shows what their constituents want, too many legislators go against that because of.
Well, the biggest ones are Republicans doing shit for religious reasons. Honestly, that is the single, and maybe you could say it's because that they count on the contribution in kind, not a cash contribution, but the contribution in kind from churches and mega pastors and shit like that who help shuffle them through. They're not giving them money directly, but they're getting them elected because they're basically instructing their flock to go flock themselves. But usually, Democratic bills that have gone through are in line with the vast majority of people. The only way area they aren't is in a couple of social areas. Initially, gay marriage, which the public was at first against and then came around to, and currently trans rights. In a couple of areas, you've got overreach from Republicans who are voting against the normal will of the voter in going against trans rights, and then you've got hyper supportive stuff that is kind of loosey-goosey language on the Democratic side that goes a bit too far for the majority of the public, for like 60% of the public. So are they doing it because big trans is paying them, or big religion is paying them not to? Just saying. Like, I don't mind bringing this stuff up, but an example would help. Because even when you're like the military-industrial complex, or some senator or whatever, you're usually talking about a senator that has a giant military base, or one of those contractors, and like Boeing or something in their district, and they employ everybody. And they do what's good for Boeing, not just Boeing's military shit. But if you bring up that Boeing makes all the passenger planes worth a goddamn around, all right, you get my point.
What their donors want.
So let's take a look at the polls right now. And the sitting president's got 64% right now. He's not really campaigning much.
64%, and he's not even campaigning. Trump is running his ass off, and he's barely squeaking by at 50.
K Jr. got in, isn't really welcomed on many left-wing outlets. He's got 17%, and you have 10%.
Ouch, Russell Brand, did you hear that? Did you hear that? He doesn't consider you a left-wing outlet.
How do you expect to close the gap when the president will not engage with you?
Well, it's difficult, of course.
Or not so much that he won't, is that he doesn't have to. And by the way, this crowd right here, these are people still teeth grind over Hillary Clinton's potential presidency.
And I think many people think that the president should engage. You have a majority of Democratic voters and Democratic.
90% of them don't think he should engage with you, though. Just saying. 90% of them in that particular poll.
Voters who do want to see a debate and do want to see their options. This, to me, is about our democracy. Jefferson said that the only safe repository for power is in the hands of the people. The people of the United States, particularly at a time like this, should be very aware of their options, and that's what a candidacy is.
Yeah, but he was also he also didn't believe women should vote at the time and had slaves, because that's when he grew up. I don't even fault the dude. It's the time he was in. But he also he narrowed their options of what the people could have away from things that, by the way, the Democratic Party has been busting ass trying to fix. I'm a big fan of Jefferson. I'm not faulting this period of it. His legal work to try and end slavery because he didn't know he couldn't, or he didn't have the ability to do it in terms of legislation. He tried to end it in other ways. And the only thing that kept him from just releasing his slaves is that somebody else would have scooped him up and treated him worse, which is a genuine concern in that area of Virginia and how the country split. That's a whole other conversation. But let's be abundantly clear. At that point, there's no Barack Obama, and there sure as fuck is no Hillary Clinton. Two people I voted for. They were impossible. My party put those folks up.
I see a campaign as a long job interview, and the voters are deciding who am I going to hire for this job.
Yes. Am I going to replace the guy who's already got the job and doing it very well, or am I to hire someone who doesn't even like the company? Let's be abundantly clear. Marianne and RFK Jr. both don't like the U.S. government as an entity, period. Hi, Betty Loco.
The president should debate his opponents. He absolutely should.
And it's a job where
He is. He's debating you by not debating you. It's just he's just calling malarkey on a grand scale.
only one person gets the job, and you want it. Joe Biden says he is absolutely fit to be president of the United States when it comes to his age and mental acuity and things like that. Do you think so?
Well, you know, for me, even if he was at the top of his game, I think I'm a better candidate. Even if he
I'm just going to go I'm just going to go ahead and say Joe Biden literally got the nomination and then the presidency because of how well he was doing in South Carolina. Not only did he have a well-oiled machine there, but he had the support of one of the most crucial black congressmen to serve in decades in terms of his impact on, and he was able to hold together a coalition through some very unfriendly, like upper middle class, hyper lefty white states who were running on a privilege ticket. He was able to hold it through that. Yeah, Clyburn. Biden was able to hold it together through that and succeed because of South Carolina, a city where her only 3 staff members who were running the place quit.
was at the top of his game. I think I have better policies. I have a better agenda for the next 4 years, and I think I'm a better person to face the Republicans in 2024.
So do you think he's too old?
You know, I don't want to get ageist about it. You know, we all know this because, look, Trump is, 2 years younger, I think. Every person has to look at that and choose for themselves. We've all seen the gaffes. And also, his team says, well, when it comes to decision-making, he does fine. I feel that I have plenty to challenge the president on based on serious fundamental disagreements on policy. I don't need to go there.
You just did. You could just say, you could jump right to the part of, I have fundamental disagreements on some policy things. I don't have to go there. You just did. You just brought up like the idea, the gaffes, and his staff says he makes decisions, blah, blah, blah.
Marianne, if anybody's watching, they'd like more information or to donate, what's your website?
Thank you. Marianne2024.com.
All right, Marianne. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much for having me.
I'm Steve Doocy.
Yes, you are. Whew. Ouch. I gotta say, good Lord. There's just so little there. And like, many people, maybe they don't know, I worked with and for Marianne Williamson for years. I ran sound at her lectures. I babysat her daughter, Emma, when she was very little for quite some time. Like, we were very close. It's just, yeah. Just, and I have to say, my experience moving away from her, and honestly, like striking out on my own, in terms of just like kind of letting go of a chapter of my life. There were several factors in there, but she was definitely one of them. That the process of doing that you ever realize after a while you've been friends with someone or in a relationship with someone or working with someone, and because of where you were in your own life and your own lack of maturity or whatever, or your necessity of the circumstances or what have you, that you don't realize until you get some distance just how awful the other person was. You know what I'm talking about? I know you know what I'm talking about. And we've all been there. And it was, I have to say, it was a huge awakening.